Hello everyone. Today I will give you some glimpse about action research in an easier way. And we will start with understanding gap analysis. But before that, let me ask you, do we really need action research? To answer that, we have to remember, behind learner success in school is a good teacher, a person who has sense of care, love, and belongingness, despite of his or her huge personal struggles in life. It is true that teaching is an art of bringing meaning to the lives of learners. But how do you know what is actually working? One best option is action research. Today, you will learn how to formulate a good research title using gap analysis that enable you to dissolve barrier between your theoretical background and actual teaching practices. But why we need to dissolve that barrier? And that is absolutely because classroom is an avenue of diverse learners with different learning styles and developmental levels. And that made teaching learning process sometimes difficult and mostly unpredictable. And our desire to help learners master the learning competencies fueled most educators to do action research. Action research is a practical study which aims to conduct an immediate action to solve a specific problem or any problem within the scope of teachers' roles and responsibilities or within his or her additional special assigned tasks in the school. That is done through collaborative effort to improve the quality of performance or achievement of the learners in the school. And the following reflective questions will help you determine the main root of classroom problems. First, what hinders the mastery of the lessons? Second, is it really the capacity of the learners that blocked the attainment of learning objectives? Third, do teaching styles and strategies address learners' diversity? Fourth, is it the learner's attitude, self-esteem, or level of motivation that delays the mastery of the learning competencies? Fifth, do actual activities make the class interactions lively and dynamics? Sixth, do teachers provide conducive, friendly, and nurturing classroom environment? And lastly, are the learning objectives sound attainable? If teachers have those questions in their mind at least once in their teaching career, they are already doing gap analysis and they can be a potential researcher. Gap analysis in action research is the practical examination through supported data of identified problems. For example, there are 60 enrolled learners in the class. At the end of the quarter period, there are only 45 learners who passed the subject. The actual gap is the 15 learners who failed in the subject. Same goes with other areas in the classroom. If there are 20 out of 60 learners who are reciting in the class, the gap is the 40 learners who are not participating in the recitation. If there are 60 learners in the section and only 45 learners are coming on time in the first subject in the morning, the gap is the 15 learners who always come late. Now, to help you reflect for the possible problem that you already encountered in your classroom, I presented to you the list of problems and possible solutions. For the identified problems, we have low achievement, poor academic performance, lack of motivation and self-esteem, poor intrapersonal and interpersonal skills, negative self-concept, absenteeism, tardiness, and financially challenged learners. For the possible solutions, we have 21st century teaching pedagogies like collaborative, cooperative, integrative, reflective, inquiry-based, differentiated instruction, game-based learning, and other strategies under constructivism approach. Psychological approaches, sponsorship, behavioral modification, contract, and counseling techniques. And once you identified already your classroom problem and possible solution to address that problem, you are now ready to craft your research title. Always remember that research title should be within the researcher's interest and field of specialization, practical, and addresses the needs of the learners. specifically presented, measurable using research instruments, either standardized or researcher-made, objectively stated using appropriate statistical methods, realistic based on the transparency of collected data free from any manipulation, within the scheduled time frame, and free from any personal moral judgment. And these are the examples of research titles. First, the effects of cooperative reflective learning approach on learners' achievement and self-concept, Arsenas 2017. Cite Me, Language of Psychological Approaches on Learners' Productivity of Producing Research Outputs, Arsenas 2018. Filling the gap in comprehension skills, increasing learners' vocabulary through word mapping. Mastery of science concepts through collaborative content-based approach. Improving learners' numeracy skills through the utilization of game-based teaching method. Hello everyone! Welcome back to our virtual classroom. Today we will be having a fruitful discussion about, and I am hoping that you are comfortable while watching and listening. Also, at the end of our learning session today, you are expected to master our learning objectives. And our learning objectives for today are, first, you have to define research. Second, comprehend the importance of research in daily life. And lastly, realize your own research experiences and knowledge. But before I will start with our discussion proper for today's session, let us do a muscle relaxation activity. So may I request you to focus your attention on one thing. Please sit comfortably. Are you now comfortable? No noise? Free from any distraction? Do you hear me loud and clear? Sit very still and close your eyes. And think about how you are feeling. Happy? Sad? Mad? Scared? Excited? Something else? Think about now on your feeling. As you are sitting quietly, place a small object in your hand, a pencil, eraser, or something else. Notice how heavy the object is. Think about what it feels like in your hand. Notice one thing about the object. Next, look around you. Focus your eyes on the nearest moving object. Is it living or non-living thing? Just stare and think how important it was to you. Then internalize. If that object is not around anymore, do you think there is something that will change to your life? Do you notice anything important you didn't value before? Alright, I think you feel really calm right now. Or maybe you feel like a blank sheet. Okay, here is the cue. We did that exercise because I would like you to reflect this question. What comes in your mind when you encounter sudden change in your life? Let me guess. Tense, uncertain, afraid, or maybe excited. Let me tell you, humans long time ago don't cook their food. They eat raw meat. The moment they discovered fire and bring it inside their cave, the raw meat eventually smoked, and they noticed the sudden change to its taste and texture. Aha! Tastes good. Then, out of curiosity, they put the raw meat on the fire and taste it again. Aha! Tastes better. And there, that changed the palate history of the human being. So what this story means? You got it right. Human being shows the characteristics of being inquisitive, curious, and having intense hunger for improvement and development. And that is where our topic rooted. Research. And what is research anyway? What comes first to your mind when you encounter the word research? Experiment, investigation, or inquiry, or maybe a product of development. Anyway, always remember, research is the systematic application of the scientific inquiry in order to find solutions to problems and contribute to the body of existing knowledge. Actually, many students are afraid when asked to do research. This is probably due to the misconception that research is a job for professionals like scientists, DepEd and SHED employees, or a requirement for students who want to finish tertiary, master's, or postdoctoral program. As a senior high school student, you might have your own conception of research. Am I right? Further, in our session today, you will understand the importance of research in daily life. In other words, you will know that research simply means searching for an answer or discovering knowledge. It is a careful study that is done to find and report new knowledge about specific topic. It is designed and planned to collect appropriate data, analyze the collected data, tabulate and interpret data to better understand, describe phenomenon, as cited by Avila 2016. But the question is, why research is important in our daily life? Let me describe it one by one. And we will start with the facts that research gather relevant information, improve quality of life, understand history, and lastly, it helps people attain personal and professional development. When we say gather relevant information, that means the results of researches are used as a springboard in conducting more researches or in planning new projects. For example, a research on the basic needs of the target customers can help companies develop and market a new line of products. Sounds great? Okay, I will give you another specific example. SWS or Social Weather Station gather relevant information where they reported that Filipinos experienced great extent of stress based on their mobile phone survey dated May 4 to 10, 2020. They do survey on Filipino experiences by hunger, and 68% experienced hunger. When it comes to job status, they reported that 58% has a job but not receiving a pay, while 51% has a job and receiving a pay. And on this table, by sex and age, you will see that women experienced greater stress than men. And people belong to late adolescent stage experienced greater stress. Maybe you are wondering on why SWS or Social Weather Station had to collect data during the times of pandemic. Am I right? What do you think are the purposes of this mobile phone survey? Let me hear from you. You got it right! It will serve as a springboard in programs, plans, or projects of the government or private sectors in making improvements or developments toward the quality of people's daily life. And be reminded that research must improve the quality of life. Meaning to say, research undertakings are basically geared toward improving the quality of life. The major breakthroughs in the field of communication, transportation, medicine, entertainment, and food and nutrition are all possible because of researches conducted. Through continuous research, these breakthroughs are further improved to make people's lives convenient and comfortable. Do you agree? Let me hear from you. Very good. And I would like to inform you that during the onset of COVID-19 across the globe, researchers, educators, government leaders, private individuals, and scientists conducted various experiments, investigations, initiatives, strategies, and researches to combat the coronavirus spreads. Many people who were infected by the virus experienced difficulty in breathing. Imagine that? And that pushes organization to build a new fleet of ventilators in the United States. But the mission failed, as reported by the New York Times, published dated March 29, 2020. And many countries never stop in doing innovations to address the scarcity of medical equipment during the pandemic. They are all looking forward to expand the number of ventilators. And actually, in Cebu City, Philippines, as the coronavirus spreads, the greater the problems they encountered in terms of scarcity of ventilators and hospital beds. But since research is about improving the quality of life, Rappler, dated May 16, 2020, reported that government put specific communities in Cebu City under lockdown. It is implemented to ensure that the spreads of coronavirus will be stopped or lessened. And that action or decision is for securing and sustaining the quality of life of Cebuanos. And of course, their decision is a result of careful analysis of data provided by the Department of Health, or DOH. Alright? So our next concept is that research helps people understand history. Do you agree? Let me hear from you. Very good! That means that understanding our history can help us better understand our current society and the behavior of the people as a whole. Research plays an important role not only in helping us trace our history, but also in understanding and providing possible solutions to the pervading problems of our current society. I will give you a specific example. The 1918 influenza pandemic was the most severe pandemic in recent history. It was caused by H1N1 virus and it spreads worldwide during 1918 to 1919. And it is estimated that about 500 million to 100 million people, or one-third of the world's population, become infected with this virus and killed an estimated 20 million to 50 million victims, including some 675,000 Americans, according to History.com. And did you know that during the flu pandemic of 1918, the New York City Health Commissioner tried to slow the transmission of the flu by ordering businesses and to open and close on staggered shifts to avoid overcrowding on the subways. And did you also know that medical experts discovered that influenza 1918 gave symptoms such as chills, fever, fatigue, skin turning blue, and their lungs filling with fluid that caused them to suffocate and die. And also, it was reported by History.com that there were shortage of physicians and other health workers because of this virus. It fueled officials in some communities imposed quarantines, ordered cities to wear masks, and shut down public places, including schools, churches, and theaters. People were advised to avoid shaking hands and to stay indoors. So, what is the point? The point is that the government officials worldwide today used history of influenza 1918 to offer suggestions for how to safely and successfully respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Scholars believe that we can draw many useful lessons from the 1918 to 1919 experience in terms of how to minimize cases. Flattening the curve. We were advised to stay inside our houses, wear face masks in public places, and observe strict social distancing all the times. We even had lockdown in some selected communities. And at last, finally, research helps us attain personal and professional development. Do you agree? Let me hear from you. Very good! Research challenges us to become better individuals through the new ideas, perspectives, and skills that we can get when doing research. Personally, you will gain more knowledge and thus widen your perspective about life. And professionally, you will not only meet your academic or school requirements, but you will also advance to a more challenging and exciting world of learning. Alright? As we are done to our lesson proper, try to ask yourself, have you experienced writing an essay or narrative report during your junior high school grades? If your answer is yes, then lucky for you, because you have already a meaningful experience and knowledge in crafting ideas into a piece of paper. The only thing that you need now is very good to internalize, try to reflect on how you will make your journey really meaningful and contributory to the school community as a whole. Hello everyone. Today our topic is about formulating research title. And we will start with the context of the new normal in K-12 education. New normal education is the adaptation to learning challenges in the midst of a health crisis. It is the shift from conventional classroom interaction into e-learning platforms, or from active classroom pedagogy into digital learning initiatives. The new normal education requires more innovation, intervention, or digital strategy to achieve full mastery of the learning competencies in the absence of physical interactions in the classroom. This issue in education requires action research. Educators, learners, and parents need to adjust and embrace technology. There is a dire need to reform the facilitation of the learning process and achieve work productivity while staying safe at home. The actual gap here is the capacity of the Department of Education to meet the higher demands of quality education in times of pandemic, and how their initiatives address resiliency in years ahead. And today, we will discuss how educators may address the following theme that may help us formulate our own research titles. And the theme that I will use to my discussion is bringing relevance to e-learning, alternative delivery of quality instruction. It is necessary to expound the relevance in the provision of e-learning for the pursuit of quality instruction, especially in the midst of health crisis due to severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2. And in relevance to our presented theme, these are some of the DepEd initiatives like ebook, module, school learning kit or SLK, and video presentations in YouTube or Facebook. These are all the alternative delivery of quality instruction that will help all the learners to master the most essential learning competencies released by the Department of Education. Action research has variables, independent and dependent. The independent variable is the immediate solution to the identified classroom or school problem like innovation, intervention, or strategy. While the dependent variable is the identified problem itself, which is the center of improvement to be addressed immediately. In other words, independent variable is a variable that is manipulated either by the researcher or the stimulus, input, or predictor variables. While the dependent variable is a variable that is observed or measured, can be influenced or changed, known as response or output. To specify, let us say that you observe your learners less participative in the class, seems lack of motivation, and have poor test scores during quarter tests. So let us say that you decided to improve both of their critical and creative thinking skills, and you plan to make a set of activities that will stimulate their brain to have more thinking exercises. So the independent variable is the possible solution itself, the teaching pedagogy, that you think may help you change the dependent variable, which is the major classroom problem. In this example, brain-based learning approach will serve as the independent variable, and the learner's academic performance is the major classroom problem. So we have now a possible solution to the major classroom problem. And our action research title could be Improving Learners' Academic Performance Through the Utilization of Brain-Based Learning Approach. In this study conducted by Arsenas 2017, the following action research title was formulated: The Effects of Cooperative Reflective Learning Approach on Learners' Achievement and Self-Concept. The independent variable is the cooperative reflective learning approach that helped the researcher to improve the independent variables, which are the achievement and self-concept. As you see, this study has two dependent variables that require two research instruments to measure each variable: the achievement test and the researcher-made instrument about self-concept. Always remember, dependent variable must be measurable. Some researchers utilized effects, effectiveness, or impact in research title, but there are instances that these terms can be excluded to make the research titles more creative. For example, bridging the gap on enrollment rate through intensive integrated marketing approach, basis for enhanced school improvement plan (SIP). In this study, the researchers used explanatory sequential mix design. The independent variable is the intensive integrated marketing approach, while the dependent variable is the enrollment rate. The instrument of the study described learners' decision in choosing which school to enroll and what strand to take in senior high school. Also, the findings of the study were utilized to formulate Enhanced School Improvement Plan (SIP), and Input Process Output or IPO model was used. Another example, during research proposal, Arsenas 2018 submitted a research title containing the word effects. But during the final action research submission, he omitted the word effects to make the title more appealing to the readers, and the same conceptual framework of IVDB model was used. Here are the other examples of action research titles: Filling the Gap in Comprehension Skills, Increasing Learners' Vocabulary Through Word Mapping, Mastery of Science Concepts Through Collaborative Content-Based Approach, Improving Learners' Numeracy Skills Through the Utilization of Game-Based Approach. Now, let me present to you my formulated research titles under the theme Bringing Relevance to E-Learning. alternative delivery of quality instruction. First, the effects of e-learning platforms on teachers' efficiency, students' achievement, and parental engagement in new normal education. Second, new social behavior and its impact to students' achievement and interpersonal skills. Third, school stakeholders' perspectives on using alternative delivery of instruction for academic learning. So those are the research titles that I am planning to consider if I will make a research work this school year. Anyway, I want you to remember that research title should be within the researcher's interest and field of specialization, practical, and addresses the needs of the learners, specifically presented, measurable, using research instruments either standardized or researcher-made, objectively stated using appropriate statistical methods, realistic based on the transparency of collected data free from any form of manipulation, within the scheduled time frame and free from any personal moral judgment. And I would like to share with you my learnings from Dr. Alvin Nuki, my research professor at La Consolacion University, Philippines in Malolos City. He reminded us that before you could pursue your study, you have to ensure that there must be a conceptual and research literatures related to your study. There must be an adequacy of presentation in reference to the problem, research design, and significant findings of the previous studies. You cannot write your studies without reading the literature first. And for our next topic, we will discuss the difference between the blank spot and blind spot of literature. So, my challenge to you guys, please think about a good research title that will address your identified major problem in relevance to the new normal in K-12 education and initiatives done by the Department of Education or your respective school. Hello everyone! Welcome to our virtual classroom. Today you will learn how to formulate research questions for your research paper. Also, you will know how to develop strong research questions based on your variables. You will know how research questions pinpoints exactly what you want to know and how it gives a clear focus and purpose to your paper. So, I would like you to prepare your pen and clean paper for some notes in our discussion.
So let us start now our lesson about statement of the problem or specific, measurable, realistic, attainable research questions.
Let me present to you our objectives for today, and I am expecting that you will master at least 85% of our learning objectives. First, at the end of the session, you should know the difference between good research questions and bad research questions. Second, you are expected to formulate your own research questions. And lastly, you have to value the role of research questions in generating reliable and valid findings of the study. And to start with our learning session today, let us know first what is research question. In a research paper, you will usually write a research question to guide your reading and thinking. In other words, your research questions serve as your guide or path in finishing your entire study. Bigger research projects such as a thesis or dissertation, you might have multiple research questions but should be clearly connected and focused on your main research problem. Then the answer that you will develop from your research question is called thesis statement. the central assertion or position that your paper will argue for. Remember, all research questions should be focused on a single problem or issue, researchable using primary or secondary sources, feasible to answer within the time frame and practical constraints, specific enough to answer thoroughly, complex enough to develop the answer over the space of a paper or thesis, relevant to your field of study and or needed by the community and may add contributions to the society in a broader sense. Now, let us talk about the difference between the good research questions and bad research questions. Always remember that good research questions have no simple answer, are open-ended, and consider cause and effect. Researchable can be answered with accessible research, facts, and data. In other words, there are available research literatures for your research questions containing your variables, specifically the independent and dependent variables. Good research questions open the door for other areas of research and inquiry. Often begin with how, why, what, and which. Pass the so what test that are interesting to others. And now, what are the indicators that your research questions are not good? Meaning to say, your research questions need revision. First, have simple or easy answers. Can be answered with single word, a number, or a list. Or cannot be answered at all. There is no absolute answer or no available information to answer the question. And bad research questions can only be answered with an opinion. Often begin with who, when, where, how much, and how many. The question now is how to write good research questions. The process of developing research questions follows several steps. First, you have to choose a topic. Then, review research literatures. You have to know the blank spot and blind spot of the literatures. Let me unlock first the context of blank spot and blind spot. Blank spot means you try to read literature, but the body of the literature is insufficient to help you suffice your needed information to test hypotheses. Then, your goal is to create a body of knowledge through qualitative questions. You formulate qualitative questions when there is a minimal number of articles available. While blind spot means that there are sufficient research literatures, but the findings are conflicting. Or in other words, there are two or more research authors with contradicted results. Then, if there are conflicting findings on the literatures, there is a gap between the findings of various researchers, and that is already a research problem that must be answered. And as a researcher, you have to intervene by doing hypothesis testing. Then that is the time to formulate quantitative questions. Anyway, you have to be very careful in formulating your research questions because that is the heart of your research paper. That is where you will generate your data, and everything in your study must be evidence-based. Meaning to say, you have to analyze your data that is purely based on your research questions. Let me clarify again. If there is a blank spot on your chosen topic, you will use qualitative designs. Therefore, you have to formulate qualitative questions that answer what and why. You will develop a theory, and as a researcher, you are part of the process. Your paper will be very rich in narrative. individual interpretation, and you will do the analysis of words or ideas from the participants. And if there is a blind spot of the literature on your chosen topic, you will use quantitative research designs. Therefore, you have to make quantitative questions that will answer how or determine the strength of relationship or difference. You will test the existing theory. You will report statistical analysis, and the basic element of analysis is number. And when you have a clearly defined problem, you need to formulate one or more questions. Think about exactly what you want to know and how it will contribute to resolving the problem. Remember, the kind of question you use depends on what you want to find out about the type of research you want to do. It will shape your research design. What makes a strong research question? Anyway, writing questions is not a difficult task in itself, but it can be hard to work out if you have a good research question. Research questions anchor your whole research project, so it's important to spend some time refining them. The criteria that I will present to you can help you evaluate the strength of your research question. Number 1. Answerable using literatures. And we have 3 types of literatures. First is the conceptual literature, like concepts, theories, laws, Republic Act, and propositions. For example, DepEd Order Number 40, Series 2012 on DepEd Child Protection Policy, or Abraham Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. Second, we have research literature like those actual researches that are IMRAD in format or published articles or materials in reputable journals. Third is the gray literature like theses and dissertations, not yet published, found in library of colleges and universities. These are the actual examples of websites where you may have free access of research literatures. You may get articles from Education Resources Information Center or ERIC, or in multidisciplinary aggregator of open access journals and papers or paparazzi. Now, the next criteria in evaluating the strength of your research question is that good research question focuses on a single topic and problem. Always remember that your research questions contain your independent and dependent variables. In other words, your central research question should follow from your research problem to keep your work focused. If you have multiple questions, they should all clearly relate to the main objective of your study. Next is answerable within practical constraints. It means that you have to ensure that you have sufficient time and resources to do the research required to answer the question. In the Department of Education, we have budget for doing action and applied researches through BERF per DepEd Order Number 16 Series 2017 or DepEd Research Management Guidelines that provide guidance in the management and conduct of research initiatives. And you know what? All eligible DepEd employees may avail research funds. Why need fund? Because there are expenses in doing research, from data collection, to analysis of data, to research presentation, to publication. Anyway, if you think you might struggle to gain access to enough data, consider narrowing down the question to be more specific. And do you know that there are some researchers who keep adding more research questions to enhance the thickness of the research paper, which I personally found unnecessary. Research is not about the thickness of your paper. It is about the problem that might answer right away by the specific research questions. All the terms you use in the research question should have clear meanings. Avoid vague language and broad ideas. Okay, our next is that research question addresses a problem relevant to your field or discipline. Why? Because research question should be formulated based on your initial reading of literatures. You have to study very well the blank spot and blind spot of the literatures and make sure that you develop research questions focused on addressing a problem or gap in the existing body of knowledge. Then, research question cannot be answered with yes or no. It must be complex and arguable. Be informed that yes-no questions are too simple to work as good research questions. They don't provide enough scope for investigation and discussion. For example, is there an increase of COVID case in the country? This question may improve into what factors contribute to the increase of COVID case in the country. Always remember, research question is not answerable by yes or no. Because again, you have to provide scope for debate and deliberation. The answer to the question should not be a simple statement of fact. There is a dire need to discuss and interpret what you discovered through data analysis. Another example. What decision made in secret meeting about COVID-19 caused Philippine government to declare enhanced community quarantine? The question cannot be answered, so let us improve it into what factors influenced Philippine government decision to declare enhanced community quarantine. It is worthy to note that there are often so many possible causes that a research paper cannot provide meaningful and thorough answers. So I suggest to use what or how in your research questions. In this example, I provided a research problem for senior high school researchers. So let me read. As a immersion participant in senior high school, you are interested to know or to assess the perception of school stakeholders on the utilization of webinar sessions for work immersion orientation and online training. So with that problem in mind, you may develop a research question appropriate to your capacity. You have to review the available literatures online because you cannot visit libraries in the colleges and universities. And the suggested research question is, what is the stakeholders' perception on the utilization of e-learning platforms for work immersion in terms of knowledge, experience, commitment, and valuing? On this given question, you may project already the statistical tools that you may use. As senior high school learners, frequency, mean, and percentage are the most comfortable tools that you may use while staying safe at home. There is no need for you to make intricate or sophisticated study like what other researchers do. But anyway, if you are good in statistics, you may check the significant difference between the perceptions of stakeholders prior and after the utilization of the webinar sessions in work immersion, especially if you are BE Ed learner in colleges or universities with your action research subject. Alright. Our next example is for the researchers in the field of teaching. Let me read the example of the research problem. The teacher in a national high school observed that majority of the learners had poor test results during quarter tests, and they seemed less motivated to do classroom tasks. And let's say, after the review of literatures, the said teacher found collaborative teaching as a possible solution. And these are the examples of research question. What is the achievement of the learners based on pre-test and post-test? Second, is there a significant difference between the achievement of the learners exposed to collaborative teaching technique and those taught using conventional teaching technique? These research questions are the best examples for those who would like to conduct action research. And always remember, your study should always contribute to academic debate. It should contribute to the existing body of knowledge, and that is the reason why we have research literatures to be reviewed prior to the conduct of the study. Anyway, it is not actually necessary to ask groundbreaking research questions that nobody has ever thought before. Just prepare research question with some aspect of originality. Look to the new angle of your study in comparison to the conflicting findings of the previous studies. So, before I'll end this session, I leave you this assignment, your task. You have to formulate your own research questions based on this research problem. I will read. In times of pandemic, learners will do school tasks at home. There are some who cannot submit their activities on time due to lack of gadgets and access to internet. And this is the question. As a person with great awareness to their difficulties, you read literatures about e-learning platforms. You found conflicting findings and you decided to test hypotheses. What would be your research questions? So think at least 2 research questions for this session.
Do you want to know? Well, I've been thinking.
Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel, and today we will gonna talk about writing an introduction for your research paper. Introduction is the first thing that your reader is going to see, so you need to make sure that it is clearly presented in concise but meaningful manner. There are 5 important aspects in writing introduction in IMRAD format. It gives overview, state identified gap, present practical or theoretical problem, specify research problem, and thesis statement. Introduction is the first part of the paper. In IMRAD format, it is written in a specific way. And to write a good research introduction, you have to stretch your imagination to create composite ideas related to your selected topic. There are necessary steps to do in making the introductory part of your research paper appealing. It includes searching updated references for gathering relevant information, reading books, having intellectual discussion or consultation with professionals, and of course, reviewing previous research works. When you combine your search information with your schemata, there is a sprout of brilliant ideas that will eventually come out in your mind, and you could say that you are finally ready to start a new journey in your research venture. Of course, you have to write a catchy opening sentence. Introduce your topic in a clear deductive sense. Cite the available related literature, and you have to tell what is new to your study as compared to the other studies. And of course, you have to state your research hypothesis. Always remember, in discovering what to write about, let your ideas flow into actual writing. Make a draft. You may find yourself exciting while correcting, adjusting, and editing your paper. But always remember that polishing your work will bring you into new dimension of writing experience. Classroom-based action researches focus on the single issue identified by individual teacher or collaborative effort of the group of teachers who encountered the same issue in the classroom. But in any way, you have to write good research introduction based on depth and critical analysis of the identified single problem in the classroom. Now, let me present to you the guidelines in writing introduction or context and rationale in action research. Presenting the first part of the study in a striking and comprehensive manner is important to get the attention of the readers. Context and rationale or introduction must be written in paragraphs. It begins with the overview of the study, which describes the single identified major problem in a broader scope that will lead to the motivation and intention of the researcher in conducting the study. It showcases researchers' vocabulary in simple and appropriate words, persuasive and directional. It is always written in present tense, provides factual data and necessary background information that will support the ideas of the researcher and will give clear perspectives to the presented topic. It has power to enlighten and shape readers' ideas. And to write the introductory part of the study, the following can be considered. First, you have to provide perspective on the identified major problem of the study. Meaning to say, when you try to think about the reasons of applying solution to the identified specific major problem in the classroom, you are projecting already the possibilities of achieving your main objective. This is where your horizon starts. Holistic perspective is the general viewpoint why most researchers wanted to pursue the study. Teaching philosophy will be applied where set of related body of knowledge that influence classroom practices, researchers' personality and set of values are dominantly manifested. Remember, this is the first paragraph of your context and rationale or introduction, therefore, must be inviting to the taste of the readers. Next, you have to provide theoretical background of the study that will support your principles. In action research or in any study, the theoretical foundations of the study are also included in the introductory part. The researcher integrates the theories best suited to the variables to support the line of arguments of the study in a clear and logical manner. It is a researcher's theoretical perspectives relative to the main objective or variables of the study. Third, you have to provide the current situations of your learners in the classroom that motivates you to conduct the study. As inquisitive teacher or researcher, difficult to simple analysis of the current situations in the classroom happens through gap analysis. You may review my previous posted video in this channel. And in this part, the researcher will describe all the circumstances that hinders the mastery of the learning objectives, the reasons behind the motivation, self-esteem, or whatever the dependent variable of the researcher. There is a dire need of giving immediate solution to the identified major problem that of course you have to emphasize comprehensively. Then, you have to identify the possible solution to that problem. And to address the identified major problem in the classroom, the teacher or group of teachers who are researchers must transform themselves into a community of learners in the school. Collaborative discussion with school head and other teachers is an act of reflective inquiry where the immediate solution to the problem will be identified specifically. The researcher will present the principles underlying to the context of independent variable, which is the solution itself. The complete descriptions of how the identified major problem be
answered, and solved along the process of the study. Next, you have to present related literature that will support and rationalize your given solution. The framework of previous scientific work or past studies and your present undertakings must be connected to each other. It should provide clear justifications to the variables, hypothesis, and the method. And in citing related literature, past tense of the sentence is always used. And of course, you have to include the main goal or objective of your study. In the latter part of your introductory part, in the latter part of your introduction, okay, the main objective of the researcher may be presented in simple and concise form.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today our topic is about American Psychological Association or APA 7th edition referencing style. The American Psychological Association established a set of rules designed to ensure clarity of communication and cite sources within the social sciences to avoid plagiarism and construct accurate reference citations. All of the APA writing rules can be found in the publication manual of the American Psychological Association, including the details on how to organize professional journal articles and how to cite sources, and of course, how to list references. Here are some of the past presidents of the American Psychological Association. We have William James, 1894 and 1904. James McIntyre, 1895, James Mark Baldwin, 1897, Hugo Mastenburg, 1898, John Dewey, 1899, Mary Whitton Calkins, 1905, Edward Thorndike, 1912, Clark Hall, 1936, Carl Rogers, 1947, Harry Harlow, 1958, Abraham Maslow, 1968, Albert Bandura, 1974, Philip Zimbardo, 2002, and Robert Sternberg, 2003. It is worthy to note that majority of them were engaged in the field of psychology, and be reminded that American Psychological Association and American Psychiatric Association both share acronym APA. But American Psychological Association is bigger in terms of membership, while American Psychiatric Association is the publisher of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5. And Stanley Hall was a pioneering American psychologist and educator. Hall was the first president of the American Psychological Association. His interests focused on childhood development and evolutionary theory, and a review of General Psychology Survey, published in 2002, ranked Hall as the 72nd most cited psychologist of the 20th century. APA Publication Manual was published during the year 1952, first edition, and the second edition was published year 1974, followed by the third edition that was year 1983, and 1994 fourth edition, 2001 fifth edition, 2009 sixth edition, and the recent edition was published year 2019 month of October. Since we keep up to date with the latest citation trends, let us take the time to determine the most essential changes between APA 6th edition and APA 7th edition. So let me present to you the overview of the major changes in the APA 7th edition. First, book references now omit the publisher location. Second, journal articles should always include an issue number. Third, you can add up to 20 authors in a reference list instead of only 7. Fourth, social media examples were added. And lastly, Websites URLs omit the retrieve from or access from phrase. And be reminded that in the APA reference list, the writer should provide the author, year, title, and source of the cited work in an alphabetical list of references. If a reference is not cited in the text, it should not be included in the reference list. And the reference format varies depending on the document type, if that is journal article or book, but generally speaking, always follows the same pattern of author, date, title, and source. One of the major changes included in the APA Manual 7th edition is that publisher location is no longer included in the reference list. In the 7th edition referencing style, geographical details of a published book are already excluded. Publisher location is no longer required. The rise of academic co-authorship is reflected in the new APA format, as APA 6th edition allowed 7 author names in a reference entry. APA 7th edition now allows up to 20 author names in a reference entry. However, sources with 21 authors or more should list the first 19 author names and an ellipsis followed by the last author of the source. The updates in relation to URLs in APA 7th edition is that we may now finally omit the wording retrieve from or access from before a URL. URL specifies the location of digital information and the internet and can be found in the address bar of your internet browser. URLs in references should link directly to the cited work when possible. Also, in APA 7th edition, examples of social media sites such as Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook may be included. Other alphanumeric identifiers such as the International Standard Book or ISBN and the International Standard Serial Number ISSN are not included in the APA style references. In-text citation have two formats, parenthetical and narrative. In parenthetical citations, the author name and publication date appear in parentheses. For example, New Normal and K-12 education needs online platforms and teaching to deliver academic learning in the absence of physical contact, Arsenas 2020. In narrative citation, the author's surname appears in running text, and the date appears in parentheses immediately after the author's name. The author's name can be included in the sentence in any part of the paragraph. For example, Arsenas 2020 emphasized the dire need of using digital teaching pedagogy in addressing the new normal in K-12 education. In rare cases, the author and date might both appear in the narrative. In this scenario, exclude parentheses. For example, in 2020, Arsenas noted the accessibility of module and school learning material or SLK in rural areas due to lack of internet connection for academic learning. Let us sum it up. For book in a reference list, invert name so that the last name comes first, followed by a comma and the initials. Leave a space between initials, retain the order of author's name for multiple authors. Then, place the copyright year in parentheses, and with a period. For the title of the book, capitalize only the first letter of the first word. For a two-part title, capitalize the first word of the second part of the title. Also, capitalize proper nouns, italize the title, and with a period. If the book have an addition, include the number in parentheses after the title but before the period. For the publisher, include the name of the publisher followed by a period. Do not include publisher location. Does the book have DOI? Include a DOI if available. DOI means Digital Object Identifiers. It is a unique alphanumeric string that identifies content and provides a persistent link to its location on the internet. For a journal article, let me appreciate first the Education Resources Information Center or ERIC for the sample article that we will use for this discussion. And also, special thanks to Big Rakhtar and Dogan 2017 for giving their contribution in the field of education and research. So let us use this article as an example. Invert names so that the last name comes first, followed by a comma and the initials, may include up to 20 authors, leave a space between initials, retain the order of author's name for multiple authors. Then, place the copyright year in parentheses and with a period. For the title of the article, capitalize only the first letter of the first word. For a two-part title, capitalize the first word of the second part of the title. Also, capitalize the proper noun. Do not italicize and with a period. For the name of the periodical, capitalize all major words in the periodical name, followed with a comma. Italicize the periodical name but not the comma after. For the volume number, italicize the volume number. Do not put a space between the volume number and the parentheses around the issue number. For the issue number, do not italicize the issue number or parentheses. Follow the parentheses with a comma. If there is no issue number, that's okay. Follow the volume number with a comma. Include the article page range. Use an end dash. Do not put spaces around the end dash and with a period. If the article have a DOI, include a DOI for all works that have one. Do not put a period after DOI. But if there is no DOI, just include the URL. And now, let me share with you the 10 free online journals and research databases. First, we have Paparity, Google Scholar, Core, Science Open, Education Resources, Public Library of Science, CIA World Factbook, Education Resources Information Center or ERIC, Semantic Scholar, and Directory of Open Access Journals. And let me share also with you the free online plagiarism checker tools like plagiarisma.net, plagiarismsoftware.net, plugscan.com, duplichecker.com, keytext.com, and plagiarismcheckerx. And I would like to stress that careful citation practices will strengthen your credibility as a researcher because it serves as a fact-checking tool to verify your research work. Special appreciation to all my online sources, cited online journals and research databases, mentioned online plagiarism checker sources, especially to American Psychological Association or APA. Thank you very much. That's all for this session and happy writing, everyone.